Hey friends, that was a little early. My name's Ciotti, everybody. Man, I'm having a hard time lately cutting that music off at the right time. My name's Ciotti, everybody calls me Ciotti. Welcome to the show. It's Whoop Wednesday. We are going to take a look at lower KV motors, which apparently might make more power. KV is not everything. KV is important, and 9 times out of 10, a higher KV motor will make more power than a lower KV motor. The one scenario where kind of like 100% of the time a higher KV motor will not make more than a lower KV motor is when you're putting a propeller onto the motor that's just too much. You're expecting too much of the motor, and it can like almost kind of bog down, kind of like if you try to go up a hill in fifth gear in your car that doesn't have gobs and gobs and gobs of power. It can almost like kind of bog down. You're asking too much of the, in that scenario, engine, in our scenario, motor. What happens with these brushless motors when that's the situation is that you will keep dumping more and more and more amps into the motor, but you won't get any extra power. It'll just turn the extra electricity into heat. And so, yeah, obviously you don't want that. I am taking a quick look at... interesting. Okay. Yeah, 0803. I was waiting on a reply back from somebody, and I've got it here. So that's good. Let me just... cool. Marco Onsano. Marco Onsano messaged me a while back, and he said, hey, I've got the Flywoo 23,500s. I've also got the RCinpower 22,000 kV motors. They're both 1002s. I swear that the RCinpowers make more power. And somebody else had mentioned that as well. Somebody else had mentioned that the RCinpower 1002 22,000s actually perform more like a 24,000 kV motor, which is super, super, super interesting. And so I don't know what I placed an order with GetFPV coming up on a week ago, and do I not even have a tracking number yet? I really kind of need that order. I need the motors less than I need the frame on that order. I might need to message them tomorrow and be like, hey, what's happening here, friends? Newbie Drone, I did an order with Newbie Drone at the same time, and that came a couple of days ago. I know that GetFPV is kind of merging with RDQ, so maybe there's something going on there. But yeah, I need this for. I ordered the new version of the AOS Cine 25 frame, which I need because I'm doing an 03 build for America Criterium Cup at Anniston, not this weekend, the following weekend. And yeah, like I need to get that built so I can test it a little bit and make sure that it's not going to hurt any bicyclists. But I need that frame. Also, I also have the 03 version of the QAV frame coming from CNC Madness. It's looking like that's going to get here first, which is kind of fine. I'm fine building in either one. The AOS Cine 25 is mind-blowingly fragile, unfortunately, but it has less obstruction of the thrust, so it's more efficient. You just can't crash it. So I'm actually okay. Whichever one I get first, basically, is going to be the fresh build that I do. And then this is like the opening. This is the first time I'm going to be running 03. If it works okay, I will pull one of the existing builds apart and swap the frame and put 03 in it. But for right now, I'm not going to pull either one of those apart because for all I know, I don't know. The 03 system might be a pain in some weird way. So yeah, that's what's going on with that. Come on, GetFPV. I need my stuff, yo. In the chat, Freelojo is first, Bo Weber is next, Riot 9, Tongue Out FPV, Mothy Timmons, Arcs UK, Scotty Scott, Mothy, Wake and Bake, Raging Leet, Travis Sawyer, Kilo Zebra, Scotty Scott, Northern Tier, Troy Prelog, Frank Nicholas, Beef FPV. It's a good name. AJ Farah, Limits, McBucus, Peace and Love FPV, Volusia, Daniel 1964, AJ Farah, Freelojo again, Douglas Otwell, Walter, Riot 9, Parkour Guy, CMYK FPV, Freelojo again, Cole Powers, I haven't seen you in a while. How are you, man? C. Will, 661, Douglas Otwell. C. Will doesn't like the opening song. I get at least one person a month that's like, yo, what's the opening song? I love it and I need it. So C. Will, I think you're in the minority. Maybe not, but maybe. Yeah, I've never changed it because people consistently tell me that they love it. So I'm like, okay. Where were we here? 661, Sebi D, Danzilla, Matt Norton, DeCabacow, AJ Farrer, Max Melner, Jason Crabtree. I haven't seen you in a while either, man. How have you been? John Luca and Anonymous. What's up, friends? Thanks for coming. Let me just click a couple of buttons here. I got to make sure that I don't lose this message. I got to reply back to a couple of people there, and I just don't want to lose that tab. All right, that should be good. We're going to try to fly 6 batteries today. They're going to be 75 millimeter, 40, I'm sorry. Yeah, they're going to be 45 millimeter propeller and 40 millimeter propeller batteries. We will put the ultralight 75 millimeter Walksnail rig up in the air as a comparison point. And then we're going to put the 75 millimeter Pro build up in the air with the Flywoo motors on it. The Flywoo 1002 23,500 kV motors And then we're going to swap this over to a set of iFlight Xing 1002 22,000 kV motors. And we're going to see. I haven't heard anything about these motors, so maybe the RCinpower 1002s are just some kind of magical unicorn dust. But I was doing the newbie drone order, and they had these motors, and I just thought, you know what? It really makes sense for us to kind of try out pretty much all the 1002s. So yeah, for science, we're gonna try these Xings. I'm weirdly kind of hoping tonight that these don't make more power because, well, let's dive into it. Motors, brushless motors, brushless outrunner motors are designated by their stator size and their KV primarily. Those are the two big things. In our case, we're looking at 1002 motors, 10 millimeters wide, 2 millimeters tall. Very, very small motor, but very, very small lightweight rigs. The other designation is the KV. This is basically the RPM of the motor. We're in a scenario with these builds where I am not drastically overpropping these motors, which we talked about a minute ago. So that's not going to come into play here. We could probably run all the way up to like 30,000 kV motors, and we still would barely be overpropping them on a 1002. We're looking at 23,500 kV versus 22,000 kV. A difference of 1,500, which is absolutely significant. I should be able to feel the difference between these motors. And what I should be able to feel is that the Flywoo 1002 23,500s should make more, just straight up, more power than these 22,000s from iFlight Xing. But, even though the stator size and the KV are the two main contributing factors to how much power a motor make, how efficient it'll be, blah, 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 there are a whole bunch of other things that come into play. I'm going to miss a lot of them, but just off the top of my head, the air gap, that is the distance between the magnet and the stator poles, that's called the air gap. The tighter the air gap, the more power the motor is going to make, but potentially the more fragile the motor is going to be. The motor bell sits up here like this, and then the stator is like this, and if you start smashing this motor and you knock if you bend the motor shaft on the bell, the magnets can come into contact with the stator poles, the outside of the stator poles, and that's pretty much game over for that motor. You can try to bend it back, but once the motor shaft is bent, it's never going to be the same again. If you bend it back, the first time you crash it, it's going to bend right back over again. So for the most part, when that happens, you just trash the motor. So the air gap is super important. The strength of the magnets is super important. By the way, 99% of this info is based on conversations that I've had with Chris Rosser, Mark Spatz, UAV Tech, and Ryan Harrell of Mini Quad Test Bench. These are the guys that know far more than I do. I'm not an engineer like they are, so I just pay attention to the engineers, and I have been doing that for many, many years now. And I will typically have a conversation with those guys, and then I'll do sort of a bunch of my own testing, and then I'll usually go back and bug them again and be like, hey, I just wanted to confirm a couple of things. I tested this, that, and the other thing. And then usually a while later, another 6 months to a year later, I'll check back in on them. and just, I'll have other variations of questions to kind of ask them. It's just good to kind of, for me at least, to revisit this stuff and make sure that I'm not, well, I mean, I'm crazy, but make sure that I'm right at least while I'm being crazy. So yeah, that's where the majority of this info comes from. These are the guys in FPV that have more knowledge surrounding this stuff than anyone else. So they're the people that I try to surround myself with and have as many conversations as I possibly can. So air gap between the magnets and the stator poles. The strength of the magnets, these manufacturers will make claims of using N52 magnets or N48 magnets. From what I understand, they are almost never actually N52 magnets or N48 magnets. They are significantly lower strength magnets that we actually get in our motors. You know, our motors are very inexpensive for what they are, and we beat the snot out of them. So if these motor manufacturers were going to try to charge 30, 40 bucks a motor, none of us would buy them. Some of us would buy them. We would buy them for a while, and then we would get sick of how expensive it is to run. And then we would probably end up buying the less expensive motors that perform pretty good. So the designation of the magnet matters. The thickness of the magnet matters quite a bit, actually. And as Chris Rosser has recently proven with his motors, thicker magnets are not necessarily always better. There's a point of diminishing returns with the thickness of the magnets. And so there's a little bit of a balance there. The thickness of the laminations in the stator pole matter. If you ever look at a stator from the side, you'll see that there's laminations to it. The tighter that those laminations are, the more power that motor can potentially make. The volume of the copper windings that are in the motor. When you make a motor that's 22,000 kV, let's say, you're supposed to maximize the thickness of the winding material so that you get as much copper as possible around the stator poles for a given kV. When you see a manufacturer that just has 1 kV of a motor, in theory, you're safe because they spec'd out that kV, they spec'd out the thickness, the thickest possible winding that they can run on there, and away they go. If you see a motor where there's a bunch of different kVs, 18,000, 20,000, 22,000, I start to get a little bit wary there because, again, most of our stuff is being produced as cheaply as possible. And the cheapest way to do that with multiple kVs is to take the lowest kV, so in our example here, 18,000 kV, and to figure out the correct thickness. So the higher the kV, the less the winds around each individual stator pole. So at 18,000 kV, there's going to be the most possible winds on the stator poles. So the thickness of the copper wire is going to be as thin as it's going to be, the thinnest out of the other kVs. And then so they've got a machine that winds these things. So for 18,000 kV, they figure out the correct wire thickness. They put that wire into the machine. They tell the machine, hey, I need you to do 15 winds per stator pole. The machine fires up, 15 winds per stator pole. Great. They knock out a whole bunch of motors. And then they're like, okay, we did 18,000 kV, which is 15 winds. Now we want to do 20,000 kV, which is 14 winds. Less winds, higher kV. The easy thing to do is just to punch that into the machine and tell it to do 14 winds. And this is something that absolutely does happen in the FPV world. I don't have any specific information like, this manufacturer does it and this manufacturer doesn't. But I've heard from reliable people that absolutely this has happened before. It's probably happening right now, and it will probably continue to happen in the future. So you just punch into the machine 14 winds, leave the thickness of winding material that's in there, wind it for 14 winds, and the kV measurements are based off of an unloaded motor. So there's no propeller on it. And with no propeller on it, there's practically no load on the motor. So it really doesn't test how much power the motor can make. It just tests how high it will spin up RPM-wise. And then you get your 22,000 motor, you do it again. You tell it not 15 winds, not 14 winds, 13 winds, and you do it. And so what you can potentially end up with is an 18,000 kV motor that's got the correct amount of copper wound around the stator poles, the thickness of the copper wire paired with the number of turns, 15 is just the random number that I pulled out of the air, is perfect. And there's no extra space, and there's a ton of copper on each stator pole, and that motor makes great power. It doesn't make high kV, but it makes great power because it has a lot of copper around the windings, which is one of the things that allows these motors to make power. But then your 22,000 kV motor, once you've put a propeller onto it to load it down, there's a potential that it can make less power because you did not increase the thickness of the windings. The right way to do it, if you have multiple KVs, is each individual KV, you calculate what's the maximum thickness of wire that you can put on there for the specific given number of turns. But as you can probably guess, it's going to take more time to do that. They're going to have to pull the machine apart. They're going to have to retool the machine for each individual motor. There are motor manufacturers that do it that way. I don't, again, know specifically which ones. But yeah. So, and these are kind of the things that, for example, right there, that is one of the really valuable things that you can learn from motor testing. Bench motor testing is great data, but it doesn't tell the whole story. But this situation right here that we're talking about is a great example of where you can see it sometimes in the bench motor testing. If so Ryan Harrow's website, Mini Quad Test Bench, has tons and tons of thrust tests from all different motors. And so what you would want to look for is the same exact motor, but 2 different KVs, and then just take a look at how much power they're making. If once they're loaded down with a propeller, which is how you do thrust testing, if the higher KV motor is not making significantly more power, there's a chance that you're sort of in that situation where they didn't retool the machine. Sometimes you can tell by the weight of the motor, right? Because the copper is heavy, but it's unfortunately there's not typically quite enough consistency in the production of these motors for that. Like sometimes you'll notice that you'll get a set of 4 motors and like the shrink wrap on one motor is like extra long, and on another motor it's extra short. Shrink wrap is made of rubber, it's kind of heavy. That can have an impact there. So just weighing motors is unfortunately not a good enough way of kind of myth busting that. I've kind of been down that road before, and I got some really weird results, and I talked to a bunch of people about it, and they're like, yeah, even like the length of the lead here can vary a little bit. Let's see if I can maybe have an example of that right in front of us here. Yeah, they're pretty damn close. But you guys know what I'm saying. There's a bunch of variability on these motors. These motors are not made in high enough quantities where the whole process is automated, where you're going to get it absolutely perfect every single time. If you want an example of that, grab a bunch of motors fresh out of the box and wait. Well, let's see. Let's see if we can catch iFlight Xing sleeping on these 4 motors here. I've got 4 absolutely brand new motors. Let's see. 2.59. Hold on. Yep, 2.59. Yeah, there you go. 2.57. Just trying to load the scale down each time. 2.58. 2.60. So 4 motors, 4 obviously very slightly different weights, but these are tiny little motors, right? Like they're with the bigger motors that I've seen more variability than that. So yeah, a lot of different things that can affect a motor's ability to produce power, to produce thrust, whatever you want to call it. The KV is the KV. One of the first things that Chris Rosser tests in all of his recent motor testing, which has been phenomenal, and you should check it out if you have any interest in this stuff. One of the first things he tests is the measured KV versus the actual KV. And a lot of times they're not quite right, but still, the KV does matter. And it like I said earlier, 9 times out of 10, the KV is a really good indicator. If you've got 2 motors and one of them's a higher KV, almost always that higher KV motor is going to make more power. But sometimes it will not. And you know, the lower quality the motor, the more drastic you're going to start to see that stuff. And you know, we have some manufacturers in FPV that really focus on super inexpensive stuff. And when you focus on that, the quality kind of goes out the window. Freelojo says, today is Wednesday, April 3rd. Thank you for the reminder, my friend. Riot9 says, old school, hell yeah, kiss for life. No, kiss not for life. Kiss for frustration. Parkour guy says, hello. By the way, if you want to talk to me in the chat, all you got to do is type CiottiFPV. If you do that, it'll light up an orange. You can do that with each other. If you want to get Riot9's attention, all you got to do in your message is type RYET and then the number 9. And for him, his name will light up on orange and he'll know you're talking to him. So if you want to get somebody's attention, that's how you do it. For me, you can do a super chat if you want to support the insanity that is trying to do FPV full time. CiottiFPV.com, though, is your best shot at supporting me. Join my Patreon. You get the most benefits, and it helps me out the absolute most. Click some affiliate links. It's 2024, my friends. You should be using affiliate links every time you buy something on the internet. It's free money for content creators. And, you know, a lot of us put content up on YouTube that's free. So hook us up, take 3 extra seconds, find an affiliate link before you check out every time you do an order on the internet. Or take our affiliate links and replace your bookmarks. Then you don't even have to think about it. Every time you hit Get FPV, you'll be hitting my affiliate link. You'll go to the Crossfire Nano. You'll say, who wants one of those? And then you'll buy your other stuff. There's an Etsy store where you can buy some fun stuff. There's a Fiverr page where you can work one-on-one with me. There's a Teespring store where you can get some fun shirts. This is the shirt of the day from Blipshift. It's an autocross joke. What do you think of that? CMYK says, what's up, Gangly Gang? Chat and CiottiFPV. Parkour guy says, these the RCinpower 1002. They work like a dream in my Mobile 7. I wish, man. I'm patiently waiting for Get FPV to get me my RCinpower 1002s. But yeah, these are the iFlight Xing 1002 22,000s. So we'll test these and see if they're as magic as the RCinpower. I have a feeling the RCinpowers are just magic. Maybe they're using a stronger magnet. Maybe they're doing less of an air gap. Who knows? But it makes sense to test as much of what's out there as possible. Freelojo putting the Patreon link into the chat. Thank you, dude. Douglas Otwell says, snowing here. Thank goodness for TinyWhoops and CiottiFPV. Where the hell's it snowing? It is really cold even down here in Atlanta, though. I guess I can see it. Danzel the Turbo says, good evening. Peace and love FPV says, I get 4+ minutes on my 0702 16,420 kV motors with Meteor 65 Pro frame and 35mm quad blades, Hummingbird V3AO and camera. So much precision. Nice for noob racing. Who the hell makes 0703 16,420 kV motors? What is that? Who's making them? Happy Model made an 0703. Oh wow, that's right. Man, these are old school. Yeah, this is an old school set of newbie drone motors. God, I forgot all about these. Damn. Well, I mean, the Meteor 65 Pro frame is about right for an 0703. That's a good pairing of motor to frame, and then you're also running the bi-blade. So yeah, like 703 is a big motor. That's a lot of stator volume. 16420 is a fairly low KV, so it makes a lot of sense to put that on the bigger frame with the 35mm propellers. Quad blades, TinyWhoops on quad blades are tough. I think what you're doing with the quad blades there is putting a band-aid on the fact that KV is really low, but then the stator volume is kind of high. It's a big motor, low KV. So it actually makes a lot of sense what that setup that you've done there. I don't personally like the way any of the quad blades fly, the way they fly, but I'm not a racer. For racing, the more blades, the more grip. So yeah, that's a super interesting combo there. And 4+ minutes is really good. a big motor like that, a big heavy 703, has the potential to really eat the battery. So yeah, that's a super interesting combo there. Freelojo says, is it going to be get RDQ now? Timon says, what screwdriver do you recommend for the Phillips screws on these TinyWhoops? I have always had really good luck with Weeha screwdrivers. And the one that I find is just right for the TinyWhoop screws is the 261. If you type into Amazon, get there with my affiliate link if you don't mind. If you type Weeha 261, this will come up. You can probably get a set of them. Get a set. Treat yourself. Spend $20 and get a set of Weeha screwdrivers. They are super precision. They're German made, of course, so they're of course fantastic. It's me rolling my eyes as hard as I can. No, they're just great screwdrivers. My dad turned me onto these way back when, and I've been using these for 25 years. This is the same set of Weehas that I used way back when I ran an airsoft customizing shop. And man, I took apart and put back together hundreds and hundreds of those things, and these things have just lived and lived and lived and lived. They're small enough here where you can't get enough leverage to like strip stuff out. They've got this nice little cap in the back that spins really freely, so you put the cap against your palm, and then it's just really it's just right. They very obviously designed these a million times and had a shitload of feedback over the years. Yeah, I love them. They're really, really good. And I've used them as punches, and I've mistreated them and abused them, and they've always been totally cool. The only one that I've ever needed to replace was my 1.5 millimeter Allen. A lot of the screws on the airsoft AEGs back then were M1.5, and we would really crank those tight because once you're out in the woods running around with them, and just, the way that those gearboxes work, they create tons of vibrations. They would love to vibrate screws out. So that 1.5 was pretty hammered ass when I got into FPV, and then eventually it just, rounded itself off. But yeah, all of the other ones that I've used a lot over the years have held up really well. So yeah, Weeha, yo. WIHA. Jason Crabtree says, what's up? C. Will says, I like the opening song, just feels time for something fresh, but maybe that's just me. I don't really have many others. I only have, I got sent a folder of songs way long ago, and that opening song is the best one from that folder, and then the exit song is like kind of the second best one. So I would need to start poking around for people that have royalty-free music that I can maybe buy off of them. Because there's no other songs in that folder that the guy sent me that I really dig. AJ Farrow with a $10 super chat. He says, thanks for your service last night. You are certainly welcome, my friend. All in a day's work. Cole Powers says, I often miss the beginning of streams. I like to blame Discord notifications, but it's not entirely their fault. Cole, spend $3 a month on my Patreon, and you will get emails before each and every live stream. AG Farris says, just goofing. I appreciate all the wisdom you share with us. 661 says, what all 45 millimeter props do you have and have tried? I've only tried the Bi-Blade GemFan 45s, both 1 millimeter and 1.5 millimeter, and they're both extremely unbalanced for me. Really? I've only ever tried the 1.5 millimeter shaft Bi-Blade and Tri-Blade, and I have not noticed. I mean, I guess I haven't. I have not had propellers be out of balance in so long that it's barely on my radar anymore, if I'm totally honest. I can't remember the last time I even thought about that, but now I'm going to be thinking about it. Yeah, I'll pay more attention to it now. When I first put this thing together, now that I think about it, when I first put this thing together, it did have a bunch of jello. it was kind of because I didn't crank down the screws on the camera. Once I cranked down the screws on the camera, from what I remember, the jello went away. But yeah, I'm gonna pay more attention to it now. That's super interesting. I don't really think that there are any other 45mm props other than the GemFans, are there? 45mm props, GemFan. Yeah, I'm not seeing any other 45mm propellers. So, yeah. Interesting. I will certainly be paying more attention to it. Yeah, it's just all GemFan. I mean, like, there's these, but these are definitely going to be out of balance, and they're not 1.5mm motor shaft. Interesting. Okay. Thank you, dude. That is really good food for thought. Duck says, why do you recommend the HappyModel 2G4 instead of the BetaFPV rather cross AIO plus a separate VTX? It seems financially more sensible to go with BetaFPV, but what makes HappyModels worth it? The two big things are weight. Three big things: weight, reliability, and complexity, or a lack thereof. The HappyModel setup is lighter. It is way more durable. I've heard from so many people that the BetaFPV cross AIO just explodes immediately. In fairness, a lot of people, racing is way more popular than freestyle in the world of TinyWhoops, and the racers pretty much all run the BetaFPV cross AIO. So yes, because there's more of them out there, there are going to be more complaints. I have personally not had one of the BetaFPV cross AIOs die on me. I've also not run more than like 40 or 50 batteries through any of them that I've had. So yeah, and I also don't crash them. I only use the BetaFPV cross AIOs in the Walksnail builds, which don't get slammed like the freestyle builds do. All of my freestyle builds are on the HappyModel AIO, and the durability from that AIO is just mind-numbing. It's really absurd how good that AIO is. And yeah, just like complexity, right? Like you can do a HappyModel Modulus 6 fully upgraded full tilt freestyle build in like 15 minutes. Whereas with the BetaFPV setup, you're probably into like an hour. You got to get the wire runs absolutely perfect. And yeah, it's just a lot more work to do the BetaFPV build. I've done both way long ago, probably like 2-ish years ago, when I was trying to figure out like what the ultimate freestyle TinyWhoop was going to be. I did a BetaFPV cross build with all the tricks, and then a Modulus 6 build. The Modulus 6 rig was lighter and way easier to build, and then the AIO just never died. And because of those two things, I ended up just moving the other build along. I think I actually sold it, or I might have done actually, I think I did a giveaway with it. And I've kind of never looked back since. And ever since then, I've heard from so many people that they hate the BetaFPV cross AIOs. And I don't really hear that much about the Modulus 6 AIOs. Most people, what I hear about the Modulus 6 AIO is like, holy hell, how is this thing so cheap and so indestructible? So yeah, for racers, it's a no-brainer. You have to do the BetaFPV setup with the external VTX, because HappyModel does not do a good enough job regulating their power output on the VTXs, on the built-in VTXs. For freestyle, that shit don't matter. Like, you know, it's actually kind of a good thing that their VTXs are pushing a little bit too hard. You get a little bit extra milliwatts for. Although I guess you could argue the other side of that is the extra power makes more multipathing, but it depends on where you fly. So yeah, those are the 2/3 main reasons for me. Are there people with the BetaFPV setups that fly freestyle on them? Absolutely. The weight is pretty important though. And yeah, I actually like the idea of having a separate VTX in case the VTX goes. You don't have to replace the AIO. But with the Happy Model board, it doesn't die, right? So like the argument, like I hate AIOs. Like you guys know this. You guys know that AIOs are like the worst thing to happen to FPV since, I don't know, something else bad that's happened to FPV. But if the AIO never dies, then my main complaint about them goes out the window. And that's kind of the situation with the Happy Model Module 6 AIOs, is that they just don't die. So like, hell yeah, give me less work to do. Let me just solder on a BT 2.0 lead, plug in an antenna, plug in some motors, and start flying, right? So yeah. Limit says, what are your thoughts on Quicksilver? I just bought a Fractal 65, was wondering if I should put it on it. I tried to look at your channel, but didn't find content about Quicksilver. Yeah, I've tested some of the other firmwares over the years. And every single time it ends up being like, okay, there's this like one or two cool little things about this other firmware. But there's no information online about them, or very little information online. Very few people are actually flying it to ask questions to, and then they're just not as good. Like, I think of it this way. Betaflight has had 30 plus developers working on it for over a decade. How is anything ever going to catch up to that? Like, it doesn't matter if it's Quicksilver or Kiss or Raceflight or like whatever. It's just unrealistic to think that like a guy or like a couple of guys can just magically come up with a different firmware that is going to be better all around than the one open source project that's been going from the very beginning. Some of them have come close because they've just taken Betaflight and forked it, right? So they take that 100,000 plus hours or whatever of work that the Betaflight devs have done, and then they change the names of a couple of things and add like one or two kind of cool features. And then for, you know, a couple of months, that firmware might, for a very specific group of people, might be better. But then Betaflight updates, and it's just, and they put a bunch of extra cool shit on that they've had their 30 plus devs working on or whatever, and it's just, you know, you're back to kind of square one. So yeah, I think Quicksilver's been around for a while, and I think I've maybe tried it. Yeah, I don't know. Betaflight is phenomenal. Like, Betaflight has the most sophisticated filtering. It's got feed forward, which really allows you to beautifully dial in on your stick response. You can get your PIDs to a point where there just is no prop wash as long as you have a half decent motor drivetrain set up, basically. And that's kind of it. And there's tons of information and resources available for it. So like for me to go to another flight firmware, it better be like unbelievably better, right? And they're not. Like, they're just different. And if you're just trying to if you just want to try something that's different, there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I'm sort of over it. Like, I've gone down that road a whole bunch of times of like just trying shit that's different just for the sake of being different. And every time I've done that, in the end, it's just like, man, what a waste of time this was. Or like, you know, there's a new update on Betaflight and now all of a sudden it's better. And it's like, well, shit, now I got to go right back to Betaflight. Yeah. And so, yeah. And in most cases, like I said, Betaflight is better. It's just everybody else that wants to try to make a firmware has an impossible task of catching up on an unbelievable amount of R&D that's been done by the Betaflight devs on an unbelievable number of rigs too, right? Like, I don't want to have like my TinyWhoops on one flight firmware and then my Cinewhoops on a different flight firmware and then my 5-inch freestyle rigs on a different flight firmware. That's going to ruin your ability to fly, to have like a set of muscle memory that translates from one rig to the other. You want to pick and then keep as much stuff the same as possible, in my opinion, and in my experience. But all that being said, trying different firmwares will make you appreciate Betaflight that much more, because you'll find like one or two things that you're like, oh, this is interesting and cool, and then you'll spend some time with it, and then a lot of times when you go back, you'll be like, got it. So it's a really good experience to kind of go through if you have the time and if you have the curiosity. But 9 times out of 10, people end up coming back to Betaflight. And so if you're trying to get good, if you're trying to not waste a lot of time, you might just want to stay. But like I said, no wrong answers. If you're super curious, go for it. Worst possible thing that's going to happen is that you're going to come back to Betaflight and be like, damn, Betaflight's the shit. And that's a good little experiment to kind of go through at some point in your FPV journey. I've done it a whole bunch of times. Wow, I'm way behind. How am I this far behind already? Holy Christ. Damon says, is there a world where you would send Chris Rosser TinyWhoop motors to test? No, because his test rig will not work with TinyWhoop motors. It's just not designed for him. He did 1404 motors, and I think that's pretty much as small as he's going to go. That weight that he's got is just way too big, and I'm not going to dump a bunch of motors on him and be like, here, reinvent the wheel on your testing gear. Not to mention that it's very obvious. Like with TinyWhoop motors, it is night and day which motor has the most power. And that's really kind of what and then runtime is pretty easy to kind of figure out as well, right? TinyWhoop motors are not in a place where... So like the 1404 motor testing he did, there were like a dozen different motors that he had available to test. And they were all in like very similar KVs. With TinyWhoop, there's not that. There's like one. There's one 702 that's 36,000 kV. There's one 0702 that's 40,000 kV. There's one 702. There's two 702s that are 32,000 kV. And it's obvious when you fly the two of them that the Happy model makes more power, right? So we're just not in a situation with TinyWhoops where there's enough different options that we would benefit from that kind of testing. And in a way, that's kind of a good thing, right? Like less analysis paralysis. The Happy model motors are damn good. I'm super curious if somebody could do it better. If RCinpower could do a 702 36,000 kV that's better, I would love to know the answer to that. But yeah, I don't know. Apparently, it's very difficult to make the tiny little motors. But we're starting to see it. We're starting to see more motor manufacturers come on board and make more of these lower kV, lower sized, high kV motors. Until there's a bunch of different options, though, I mean, there's not a whole lot of value in doing it, because like at a given kV and motor size, at most we've got like 2 options, and when you fly those 2 options, if one of them makes drastically more power, great, run that one. If they seem the same, run whichever one is the right is your favorite color, and sort of away you go. All Drizzle goes, have you tried BetaFPV motors yet? Angry Don says they don't fly too great, or the runtime sucks because the magnets are flat. I have not. They were supposed to send me some of their 0702s. I dropped the ball initially, and then I realized that I dropped the ball, and I got back to them with the info they needed, and then I think they might have dropped the ball. During the course of that going on, Angry Don and Quad66 and somebody else reviewed those motors versus the Happy models, and all of them said that the Happy models were the way to go. And at that point, I'm just like, done. Like no reason for me to also pile on. And at the end of the testing, that's going to take me hours and hours, say to you guys, the Happy model motors are better, right? Like if there's 1 or 2 people that I trust that come to that conclusion, like, good to go, man. Let me test something else, like these iFlight Xing 1002s, right? Like I haven't seen any info on these whatsoever. So yeah, I if they send them to me, I'll probably end up testing them. But I think that ship has sailed. I think that, yeah, which is fine. You know, like look, this is not me. This is in no way, shape, or form me saying like fuck you, BetaFPV. They've sent me a couple of things over the years for free, and that's amazing. Like I'm a lucky boy for that. You know, I was the one that dropped the ball in the first place. If when they first asked me if I wanted to test the motors, I had actually clicked send on the email rather than letting it sit here and then it ended up in my drafts, I would have already tested them by now. All Drizzle also says, don't have many choices for high KV whoop motors in Canada other than BetaFPV and happymodel. Nobody does. Those are the only two companies making high KV whoop motors. When the new Mobula motors come out, unless we spend almost $100 on duties, yeah, those are the only options, brother. It's no different here in the U.S. or anywhere else on Earth, as far as I know. I haven't seen anyone else go north of 30,000 kV, which is when things start to get really interesting. Douglas Otwell says, CiottiFPV and gang, what is the 75mm frame to use? You know, I thought until very recently that it was the BetaFPV Meteor 75 Air. But then over the last couple of live streams, a bunch of people have said, yeah, that I broke my 75 airframe on the first crash, on the second crash, on a light crash. So I don't know anymore. It's only like $4. So I would love more people to just snag one and try it. And if it breaks, you know, it's only a half an hour to swap the motors and the canopy over. Previous to that frame coming out, that frame is 1 gram lighter than the Mobula 7 V4. Previous to that frame coming out, this was the one to have, the Mobula 7 V4. It's pretty damn durable. Eventually you will break one of these little, I don't know what the hell these are called, pieces of plastic that hold the battery in. I have broken a couple of these, but man, I've abused these frames pretty good, and they've held up. So I think we're back to the Mobula 7 V4 frame. It also depends 1S versus 2S. I'm making the assumption that you're 1S. If you are 2S, the Mobula 7 V3 frame apparently is like damn near indestructible. So that's almost a no-brainer. But yeah. It feels like the Mobula 7 V4 is still kind of the way to go for a 75mm frame. But get one of each and crash them yourself. Maybe you crash differently. Maybe it's a different temperature where you're at, and maybe you can take advantage of the gram less, the 1 less gram of weight on the 75 airframe. I think if you only want to buy one frame, though, it should be the Mobula 7 V4. Frank Nicholas says spinning cap also. Spinning cap. 836. Spinning cap. Oh, talking about the Weeha screwdriver. Yep, I bet you Frank said that 10 seconds before I mentioned the spinning cap on it. It's I know it seems like a little thing, but man, it makes a difference. It lets you you know, since you don't want to strip these little screws out, it lets you really push good and hard on the screw to make sure that you don't lift up, which is what Phillips Head loves to do. Denzel the Terrible says, hammered ass, CiottiFPV 2024. Indeed, my friend. Indeed. Bob Bruce says, I've killed a BetaFPV cross AIO. I've also killed a happymodel cross AIO as well, but I have a good one of both also. The happymodel cross AIO can go to hell, as far as I'm concerned. I don't consider that to be a real AIO. It's a figment of my imagination, because that's the only way that I can explain why the hell they would have used such a long USB port on it. So yeah, I do not recommend anybody get the happymodel cross AIO. And I've also not heard good things about it durability-wise. The regular old Mobula 6 square-shaped AIO 5-volt ELRS is just awesome. Arcs UK says BetaFPV 1102s, the ones on the Meteor 75 Pro are 0.18 gram heavier than RCinpower 1002. For my tests, they make quite difference in performance. I've heard this before. Most recently, I heard it from MoFPV. Those are next. I'm going through the 1002s because I'm trying to keep the weight as low as possible. But yeah, the BetaFPV 1102 22,000s, I've heard a couple of people say really nice things about. So they're coming. I'm just, easing my way into it and testing the 1002s first, and then we'll dive into the 1102s. Timmons is in the house. He says, one more question. Would it be a good idea to reinforce the ceramic ELRS antenna with some E6000 or 7000, or just let it break and do the wire mod instead? I just let it break and do the wire mod, if I'm completely honest, because the wire, the piece of wire mod is lighter weight and it's basically infinitely durable. And everybody okay? I think everybody's okay. It's lighter weight. It's infinitely durable because it's a piece of wire. And it performs better. Like when I first did the mod, I was looking at link quality, and with the piece of antenna, the link quality was better when I would like go 2 floors upstairs. I'm like, okay. So yeah, I don't bother to reinforce the ceramics. I hope that they break off so that I can replace them. And I've actually removed a couple of the ceramic antennas now, and put the wire on right away. It's kind of annoying to do it, so I actually don't really recommend it. I just recommend wait. It'll break off eventually, and then you can swap it out. To remove it, the problem with removing the ceramic tower antenna is that it's got 4 solder pads, and the tip of your soldering iron, you're going to be able to get 2 of those pads hot, but it's a real son of a bitch to get the other 2 pads hot. So you end up having to like push it through the ceramic antenna, and then it melts and gets all, it's just kind of a mess. It's absolutely doable. But yeah, for me, it works okay. So just let it break and then replace it. MoFPV says, excited for this one. Got the 1202s on my 75. 1202s? I thought you had 1102s on it. Which 1202s do you have on it? I haven't seen any 1202s that are 3-bolt or high enough KV. What do you was that a typo maybe? Project Mockingbird's in the chat. What's up, fellas? I'm gonna make you a moderator because I want your name to show up in blue, but please don't moderate. I've got plenty of moderators in here. Welcome. Thanks for coming by. Project Mockingbird is one of the flight firmwares that I ran that was totally fine, and they had a couple of things that were really neat, but it just doesn't make sense to me to have multiple different firmwares on multiple different rigs. For me, I try to unify everything and have as little change between one to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. But again, like I said earlier, if you got it, there is definitely some value trying other flight firmwares, because they are different. They are slightly different. And for whatever reason, if it connects with your brain better, that's awesome. And then if down the road you go back to Betaflight and you actually like it better, that's cool too. Like whatever, no wrong answers. I'm not paid by Betaflight. Like there's no reason that, I would say that one's better than the other. I haven't tried them all. That's for sure, because it takes time, and I'm, that's not necessarily where I want to be spending my time. And I've yet to hear like everybody say like, hey, you have to run this one for like when I went really, so the biggest like money and time suck that I've ever spent on different firmware has been with KISS. And there were a bunch of people that were like, yo, it's mind-blowing. It's so good. You have to try it. And I spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars building a KISS rig to Steele Davis's specs way back when. And I was so excited, and I was like, this is going to be it, man. Like, I'm just starting to get good. This is going to be how I keep getting better. And like, I'll be in a part of this, like, little group of people that are like, there's a bunch of great pilots in there. And it was a nightmare, and it was worse in every way than Betaflight. But like I was so hell-bent because I'd spent so much money and so much time, and like it was really difficult to find anybody that knew anything about it. And you know, I like to try to approach this stuff a little bit technically rather than just like, hey, try these PIDs, maybe they'll work for you. Like that's kind of all it was back then with KISS and Raceflight. And just the whole experience was just a complete nightmare. But then when I went back to Betaflight, it was like, oh my God, this is so good. And that right there was like, that I was so excited to fly Betaflight from that point forward. And then down the road, I tried, what was the next? I tried Raceflight next, I think. And then after that, I tried Helio at some point. I'm pretty sure I tried Mockingbird early days. I either tried Mockingbird or Quicksilver early days. I'm pretty sure I didn't try them both, but yeah, every time that I've strayed from Betaflight, when I come back to Betaflight, I'm just blown away. And like at this point, RPM filtering works so well. Anti-gravity works so well. Feed forward is so nice. The combination of jitter reduction and the RC smoothing allows me to really dial in just the right amount of stick smoothing. So there's just a whole bunch of things in Betaflight that I really rely on to get my flight footage to look the way that it does, and for the rigs to feel the way that they feel, and to have as much of these different builds feel as similar as possible to one another, that for me personally, it just doesn't make any sense to go with some other firmware unless everybody says like, yo, this is way better. And that's not it, right? There's like a small group of people that'll be like, yeah, this is like definitely way better. And that's also a big red flag for me. When people say like, yo, this other firmware is way better, it's so great. No, that sounds like you're drinking the Kool-Aid. Like Betaflight has had the most development, the most R&D time. How could something else from one person be that much better? Like, how is that possible? And so, yeah, there tends to be a lot of red flags there. But I've certainly heard that in like specific situations, like sometimes like with specific AIOs, that either Mockingbird or Quicksilver work really, really well when that person could not get Betaflight to work well. I've not really experienced that other than the happymodel Diamond, which has been proven by people just to be an electrically noisy piece of shit. I've just never had the experience where, like, with a little bit of effort, I can't get Betaflight to work brilliantly. But, you know, a lot of people aren't willing to change things. They're not willing to move sliders around. They're not willing to type a couple of questions into Google and read a couple of answers or look up a couple of YouTube videos. And so if, you know, spending a half an hour going to a different flight firmware gets the thing to fly a little bit better, they're totally happy with that. And that's okay. It's just, that's not me. And I think that's not a lot of you guys either, right? Like, you probably wouldn't be here if you weren't willing to, search a little bit. But again, at the end of the day, if you love the way Mockingbird flies or the way that their GUI is set up or whatever, there's no wrong answers. You're not on the payroll of Betaflight or anything like that. Fly what you like the best. You know, I just try to give you guys my experience and the reasons that I choose one over the other to possibly save you time or effort or frustration or whatever. But yeah, there's some really cool people doing really cool things in flight firmware. And what I really love is when somebody forks Betaflight and then they put a really cool feature in that the Betaflight devs see and go, oh, we need that, right? Like that's really, really cool. To see everybody kind of working together on the goal of having flight firmware that flies as good as possible. And I think more often than not that happens, even though like sometimes it doesn't feel like it. Sometimes it feels like each one of these flight firmwares hate one another. And yeah, I don't think it's actually like that. Maybe it is, but where are we at? Mothy says, wait, hold on. Mothy says we really need more TinyWhoop motors and flight controllers because they're always sold out. Amen. He also says, I like BetaFPV motors that have bearings. It's rare to see a TinyWhoop motor with bearings. I'm curious about bearings versus bushings on the same KV. Quad 66 did some really nice testing, and basically what he found is that the bearing motors, when they're absolutely brand new, before you've crashed them even once, they're slightly quieter than the bushing motors. But he also said that they felt like they had less power. But then more importantly is that as soon as he started to crash the bearing motors, they got way noisier than the bushing motors. I had talked to Bob Rugi from FPV Cycle about the tiny little motors eons ago, and he said to stay away from the bearings on the little TinyWhoop motors because the bearings that they're using are, he's a dentist, they're dental drill bearings, and he said he looked into it and we are turning them at a way higher RPM than they're designed for, and that would make a lot of sense as to why the bearing motors are just not holding up. If that's true, I have no way of fact checking that. I probably do if I could figure out the designation of what those little bearings are, but I'm not gonna spend my time doing that because the bushings work amazing, and you know, a bushing is always going to be more durable than a little bearing. Jason Black says, a good friend of mine told me life moves fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. Do you think that's true of a good tune? That's a very similar quote to a quote in Van Wilder, actually. Where are my old motherfuckers at? Who remembers the movie Van Wilder? What's oh God, what's his name? What's that actor's name that was like super popular for a few years and did all of those movies in like the late 90s, early 2000s, mid 2000s. I forget his name. But yeah, it's very similar to a quote from Van Wilder. Do you think that's true of a good tune? Good tunes move pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around, you could miss them. No, I don't think that's true of a good tune. I think what's true of a good tune is that if you crash a lot, a good tune is not going to last you really long. A good tune is going to need to be backed off pretty quickly if you crash a lot. This is one of the reasons that I don't tune to the bitter limit, because it just gets annoying every couple of crashes to have to back the tune down and then back it down and then back it down and back it down. I would rather run the tune up to the point where there's barely any prop wash, and then it's my job to not put the rig into situations that generate hideous amounts of prop wash, and then I can leave the tune alone, beat the living shit out of the rig. Eventually, when the rig is so beat up that the tune doesn't fly right anymore or it tries to fly away, that's my signal to replace the motors or the propellers or the arms or whatever. And then I replace those, and the rig flies exactly the same. If you chase the dragon and you tune to the absolute limit, and then as you crash, you back it off and you back it off and you back it off and you back it off, every single time you fly that rig, it's going to fly differently. And God forbid you have multiple rigs. Each one of them is going to fly differently because each one of them is going to be at a different like state of destruction. So for me, it's like find a tune that's aggressive enough, but not overly aggressive, and just fly the damn thing and just beat it up until it tries to fly away and then fix whatever's mangled on it. Sebi D says, if not the Cross, what flight controller for a baby Nazgul? What is a baby Nazgul? Okay, so that's a tooth... Wait, no, what? Okay. A That's not going well. Oh, okay. So that's just like a little Bobito thing. 2.5. What is happening? What is the internet broken? We finally did it. The internet broke. I mean, personally, I would run a happymodel F4 5 amp. They're hard to get your hands on. I don't really know of any like little tiny AIOs that are really all that good. I've been relying on the happymodel 5 amp forever because it's been available. Now that it's not available, I've yet to have anybody say to me, yo, I finally found... I've had a bunch of people recently that have said like, yo, I'm trying out this HGLRC 1S AIO. I think it might be the one. And then a couple of days later, they reply back with, yeah, one of them was dead right out of the box and the other one died 3 batteries in. I keep hearing that. Like, Tune RC is the only company that I've heard recently makes an AIO that's even worth... apparently, it's really, really good, but it doesn't have the VTX built in. I don't even know if it has ELRS built in. So, yeah, unfortunately, I just don't know. I've not heard of many, if any, AIOs that are any good, unfortunately. I wish I had. MoFPV says 1102. Sorry, awesome. I knew it. I knew it! AntBVTHC says, I tried soldering a new UFL connector onto my X12, but how can I test that it is soldering, that it is soldered and working correctly? Don't run an antenna on it. Put it far away until the point where you get some static in the goggles, and then put an antenna on it and see if it clears up. That'd be the easiest way to do it. Project Mockingbird says, for me, since most people want my angle mode stuff, I just can't recommend Betaflight since it has the gyro overflow problem. So the angle mode stuff is what I've heard consistently people like about Mockingbird over Betaflight. I think I remember seeing in either Betaflight 4.4 or 4.5 that they're reworking angle mode. I haven't flown angle mode in 5 or 6 years. So I just don't pay any attention to that. But yeah, I have heard from a bunch of people that Project Mockingbird's angle mode is hands down better than Betaflight. Which makes a lot of sense because Betaflight hasn't changed their angle mode in eons. So Project Mockingbird seems to actually have done something with angle mode, and doing something is always going to beat doing nothing. So yeah, if you fly angle mode, I would say definitely try Project Mockingbird. I don't, and I have no interest in trying angle mode. So yeah, for me, I'm just not going to go down that. Not going to go down that path. Project Mockingbird says, also says, tuning wise, Betaflight, Quicksilver, Emu, they're all the same in flight performance. Nobody's better or worse. They're all amazing. They are all amazing. That is the brilliant part of that last statement. They really are. I mean, you know, I keep one of my very first 5-inch setups here, which is on Betaflight 3.5.7 with a half decent tune. Terrible 30x30 AIO, but you know, all things considered, compared to the electronics that we have now, terrible electronics. Yes, there is a difference between that and these on Betaflight. I think these are all still on 4.2. Absolutely, you can tell a difference between the two of them. If you put them in the hands of or showed the flight footage to anyone that's not a very seasoned FPV pilot, they would have no idea. The flight firmware has flown extremely well for the last like 5 years. There have definitely been some improvements. RPM filtering is the one that always comes to mind. Just because RPM filtering is like, look, the other filtering are audio filters, like literally for the audio world. And they work better than they should, but they're not meant for us. RPM filtering is is like almost specifically for the way that these things work. And so it's just something that is reporting actual data rather than analyzing. Yeah, whatever. We won't go down that rabbit hole. But there are some things that have changed. But yeah, man, they all really do fly extremely well. And like so you know, when I say to you that like a huge red flag is when somebody says like this flight firmware is so much better. Oh my God, it's so much better. That's total nonsense. None of them are so much better. They're maybe a little tiny bit better. But like most pilots, is going to sound mean, but most pilots aren't good enough. And it's just, I spent 4 hours getting this flashed over. You better goddamn well believe that my brain is going to convince me that this is way better. Welcome to the wonderful world of placebo, my friends. It's just, you know, it's a real thing. And like, even if you sit there and you're like, I know the placebo is there, but I'm going to try to work through this. It's still there. So yeah, but they do all fly extremely, extremely well. Walter says, have you seen happymodel Eco? It has HDZero. Too heavy? I mean, it's awesome for what it is, but it's just like these Walksnail builds. It is a like 30 to 40% increase in weight. And that's just too much. Like that's just a so much of an increase. And like with freestyle flying, why? Like why wreck the flight performance for the video to look a little bit better? Like we're not flying Cinewhoops. And basically what they turn into with the HD systems is Cinewhoops. But that's not what we're doing. We're flying freestyle. We're not flying cinematic. So yeah, it's like, for what it is, it's awesome. And I love that it exists. But when you compare the flight performance of any of these HD TinyWhoops to their analog counterparts, it's absolutely night and day. And there are things that you just cannot do with that extra weight. Like there are just tricks that you will not be able to pull off. And for me, it's way more fun to not see where I'm going. I'm saying that, you know, tongue in cheek a little bit, right? Because you can still see where you're going with analog, especially when you're flying in the house 5 feet away from yourself. But I would rather have a little bit less of a, have a little bit harder of a time seeing where I'm going, but have more runtime, more power to weight, and be able to hit the big, gnarly, backwards, upside down, Matty flip, bouncing off the wall, having crash recovery come on halfway through. You know what I'm saying? So for me, it's like, what do you want? Do you want a Cinewhoop? Do you want the smallest Cinewhoop ever? Then HDZero, Walksnail, awesome. If you want a freestyle rig, it's analog. The weight difference is just too big. So yeah, that's just me though. If you're happy with the way an HDZero freestyle rig performs, that's all that matters. But for the love of God, make sure that you fly an analog counterpart to that rig, because it is outrageous, the performance that we can get from these 17, 18 gram rigs. And yeah, even though the HDZero and Walksnail builds fly really good for what they are, I would rather have something that flies really good, full stop, than like, hey, this is pretty good for what it is. You know what I mean? Like I want it to just fly really good. Without that caveat. Limit says, is there any way to unbend a motor, or is it dead when the shaft is bent? You can. You kind of like roll the motor. You got to get the motor to spin, and you got to be able to see which direction the motor shaft is bent in, and then you got to very carefully take it and try to bend it the other way. And if by some miracle you manage to make the situation better and not worse, which is typically what happens, you're going to crash it a couple more times and it's going to bend in the exact same way. So I did that quite a bit with 5-inch motors way back in the day. And it was like, I would bend them back one time. I would get a few more crashes. It would bend all the way again. I would bend it back again. I would get one crash and it would be wrecked again. And it's just such a pain in the ass to do it that it's just like, you know what? My time is worth more than this. let me just spend a couple of bucks, replace the motor, and away we go. Danzillo the Terrible says, see Project Mockingbird about bearings above. He says, a secret person in the industry told me bearings on Whoop motors aren't any better than bushings. Bob is 10,000% correct. But secret person also now makes bearing motors just because of demand. Yep, there you go. These companies are in business to make money. And so if a bunch of people want something, and if it's not, going to catch on fire and burn their house down, why the hell not? You want bearings in your motors? Great. If you're not going to do any testing or listen to anybody that actually does the testing about it, then it's on you. And they're they fly okay, just not as good. Jay Hines says, I have a Pavo Pico and not impressed with the power on it. That's because it's a Cinewhoop. Cinewhoops, you're typically not going to be impressed with the power on. They're not meant to have lots of power. Look at that. Yes, I understand it's not for freestyling. Was thinking of moving over to an 85mm. What's a good flight controller and decent power motors for it? Yeah, I just don't know, man. I'm just not up on the AIOs. Tune RC seems to be the only company making AIOs that are even remotely reliable. And then in terms of motors, man, it depends. 85mm, that puts you into like a 2... Well, do this. Whatever the motors are on your Pavo Pico... Hold on, let me see. I'll probably look it up really quick. So the Pavo Pico, which is a 45mm prop, which is like 1.7 inches, 1.8 inches, has... This method that I'm about to do works really, really well, by the way. So the Pavo Pico has 1102 motors on it. So to go up to a 2-inch propeller, you're going to want to do... you're going to want to take the 11 and go to like a 12 or a 13. And then you're going to want to take the 02 and go up to like an 03 or maybe even an 04, but probably an 03. So at the very least, you're going to want to go from an 1102 to 1103. Ideally, what I would be doing is going to like a 1203 or a 1204 or maybe even like a 1303. When you go to a 2-inch propeller, also the Pavo Pico, it looks like is designed for tri-blade props. When you go to a 2-inch prop, you're going to have a ton of different propeller options. So going a little bit too big on the motor to like a 1204 or a 1303, that'll give you the option to run like a 4-blade or a 5-blade propeller, and you've got a little bit too big of a motor. I would always rather have slightly too big of a motor than slightly too small. And because of the fact that you're saying that you're wanting to freestyle, the Pavo Pico, which is going to be lighter because it's a smaller frame, it doesn't have enough power, and it's on an 1102. Going up to a 2-inch, you're going to gain a bunch of weight. So like going from an 1102 to 1103 would probably give you roughly the same power to weight ratio. So go up to a 1203 or a 1303, right? Like you want to take the jump and then another jump because it's not where you want it to be. If it was perfect the way it is now and then you were going up to the heavier setup, you'd be able to just take one jump. 1102 to 1103, 1102 to 1202, something like that. But you're wanting to take two jumps. And so, yeah, just keep there's a saying oh, this is super nerdy. In the world of dyno tuning cars, to add timing, which adds horsepower on the dyno, in most of the software that you run, you use the page up button to increase the timing. And so there's a saying in that world, page up for power. So for us, it's +1 for power, +1 the stator width, +1 the stator height. Stator height, think about percentages of change. An 1102, if you go from 11 wide to 12 wide, that's like an 8% increase. If you go from 2 tall to 3 tall, it's a 50% increase. So increasing your stator height is always going to add a much bigger chunk of power than increasing your stator width by a factor of like 1 or 2. If you go up like 5 millimeters wider versus 1 millimeter taller, that's different, right? But if you +1 or you +1, the +1 on height is always going to have a bigger impact than a +1 on width. Always think about percentages, not just, you know, 1 more millimeter. How much could that how much could that possibly do? Well, if it's only 2 millimeters to begin with, it's going to do a whole hell of a lot. Jay Hines says yes with the naked Caddx polar on it. I'm assuming that's the camera system that's on the Pavo Pico. AJ Farah tagged me but didn't say anything. Just Mo says I fly HDZero using the Fat Shark Scout HD. I think those are box goggles. Is it worth it to upgrade for HDZero goggles, or should I move to DJI 03 because I want to do cinematic motorsport / drift videos? That's a pretty big conversation, Just Mo. The quick and my quick and dirty answer is going to be that motorsport and drift video 03 is not good enough for cinematic motorsport and drift videos. That's just me. There are plenty of people that would say that I'm a snob for saying that, but you know, I'm entitled to my opinion. For me, it's GoPro or nothing. And the 03 system is not that much better of an FPV camera. You could actually argue that it's a worse FPV system than, you say you're currently flying HDZero. Yeah, then HDZero, right? HDZero is ultra low locked latency and great brightness and dark, great exposure algorithm. And so as an FPV camera, you could make the argument that HDZero is the best that there is. 03 is more of like a split kind of setup where, like, yeah, it works as an FPV system and the range is amazing. But with motorsport and drift stuff, you're probably not going to be doing much with range. You're going to be in the paddock, or you're going to be in grid, or you're going to be in the grandstands, and you're going to be flying like a few hundred feet away. So the range improvement of 03 is not really going to do much, if anything, for you. And the increase in latency is going to be, you're going to definitely notice it. So my quick answer for you is going to be, do you want to go GoPro? If at any point you're going to want to move to GoPro for really good quality footage, then do not go 03. It's going to add a bunch of extra weight. You're going to have variable changing latency. You're going to have significantly more latency, and you're going to spend a ton of money on it. If you're never going to go to a GoPro, then it's an easy answer, because 03 is like the only game in town. If you're not, well, I guess not. You could do Insta360 Go stuff, but why would you? So yeah, that's my answer. That's a big conversation. That's a tough one. AJ Farah says, I've beat my X12 and it's been awesome. Good choice for a Babito. There you go, X12. I forgot about the X12. Yeah, and you can still get it. Yeah, that, come to think of it, X12 is exactly what I would put in a Babito. Or that, whatever that flywheel rig was that somebody was asking before that looks just like the Babito. The main reason, though, is that you can get it. I've actually had an X12 die with not many batteries through it, and then there were a bunch of people that had X12s die. I've been running another X12 that's been bulletproof, and I haven't heard from many people that they're dying, so maybe there was just like a weird run, but I'm always weirded out when I hear a bunch of people that have issues. Walter says, do you have drawing of motor shafts 1mm, 1.5mm with a groove for retaining ring? Are they replaceable? Oh, a groove. Do I have a drawing of motor shafts? The retaining ring is replaceable. I have no idea where you would get replacements from. Whenever I break a motor, I save all the little pieces. So that's going to be my recommendation, is that like start doing that. Start saving your broken stuff, and then down the road you'll have an extra retaining ring. Yeah. I don't know where you would get those from though. So if you've got a broken motor, just hang on to it, replace it, and then you'll have an extra one for the future. Big Fran says Val Kilmer, I think, is the name you were thinking of a bit earlier in the stream. No, it's not Val Kilmer. Much younger guy. He's also the main actor in Waiting. Ryan Reynolds. That's it. Ryan Reynolds was in Van Wilder, and it was very similar to that quote from before. What happened to Ryan Reynolds? Where the hell's he been? What a handsome son of a bitch, that guy. Hold on. YouTube just did the thing, scrolling back up. Jay Hines, we got that. What happened to the chat? It got scrolled in a weird way. There we go. Jay Hines says, thanks, bro. King FPV says, hope everybody's doing well. And of course, you too, CiottiFPV. Thank you, brother. Sebi D says, Ben Stiller. Almost. Not quite. Hey, we're caught up. Cool. Walter says he's in a clinic, most likely. Oh, he is Canadian. Denzel says Canadian treasure. He is Canadian. That's right. Oh, you're right. He's doing Mint Mobile. That's exactly what he's doing. Grayson Bowen. Good call. Yeah, that's right. Ryan Reynolds. I think he bought Mint Mobile. And he's trying to get people to buy Sprint phones, basically. Okay, we gotta hurry. It's late, and we got a bunch of testing to do. So first, we are going to try the lightest weight Walksnail freestyle 75mm build that I've got here. This man, I went deep on this one to try to get it to work. I was really trying to get a Walksnail 75mm freestyle rig for flying around jungle gyms as light as possible. And this is really it. I'm not at all happy with the amount of power that this thing has, but you might be. I'm a pretty power hungry maniac. For what this is pretty impressive. This is a BetaFPV Cross AIO Walksnail Light Mobula 6 canopy Meteor 75 airframe, GemFan biblades, and a bit of a custom set of motors. This is a set of TinyWhoop 0802 33,000 kV stators that I removed the bells from, and I replaced the bells with the TinyWhoop iGow bell with the 1.5mm motor shaft. If I was going to do this again, what I would actually do is get the happymodel 0802 RS. It's their 0802 20,000 kV motor with the 1.5mm motor shaft. That bell is a little bit lighter than this bell, so it would actually perform a little bit better. And it's a motor that you can just buy. It's just $10. You can buy that motor from GetFPV and then pull the C-clips, pull the bell off, and then put it at some point when the 33,000 kV 802s come back in stock, drop the bell on, C-clip, away you go. That's what this is, and that's going to be the first thing that we fly here, just to get sort of a baseline. And then we can kind of take it from there up to the bigger propellers. This is... Yeah, I mean, this is the smallest possible motor at the highest possible kV to try to maximize that kind of power to weight ratio. Keep it light, keep it durable. But when I fly this thing outside, you'll see when I'm flying it in here, it's not bad. It's I mean, these rigs inside the house are kind of chaos no matter what. But when I get this thing outside, it just doesn't have it. It just does not have the power to move itself around in the way that I want these things to kind of move themselves around. What I find is that I'm up at like 50, 60% throttle all the time. flying this thing outside, and that just hammers the battery. The motors are probably getting too hot, and then the magnets are saturating and saturating with heat. And yeah, it's not the one. But I guess if you were going to build an indoor 75mm Cinewhoop with Walksnail, this might be it, because the weight is as low as possible, and that's going to get you a little bit extra runtime. So, like, let's fly this. Well, I'm going to fly it hard at first, and then we're going to start flying it like a Cinewhoop after that, because it really, as a Cinewhoop, it's really kind of cool. But for right now, since the battery is fully charged, oh god, I'm going to fly it hard. See, so there is a perfect example. Like, to get it to throw up over the couch, I have to... I actually hit the ceiling there. I gotta just sit it at full throttle for way longer than I would like. And again, I'm very spoiled by the ultra lightweight TinyWhoops, but like I said, when you get this thing outside, oh boy, when you get this thing outside, this problem becomes that much more obvious with it just not having quite enough power. So the battery is just charged down a little bit. So let's fly this thing like a Cinewhoop. This is fun, man. Like, you could take this thing to the mall, you could take this thing to Target, and you can fly it around nice and smooth like a little ultra itty-bitty Cinewhoop that's got some real action, 1080-60, and, like, have a really good time. But for... oh, for fuck's sake. For, like, a hardcore freestyle rig, this ain't it. It just... for outside, it just doesn't have enough stank-a-lot-of-puss. It needs more stank. But as like an ultra small little Cinewhoop, it's really cool. And now, because of how hard I was flying it in the beginning of the battery, we are already down at 3.5 volts. I'm going to run this pretty low, because you can. This is a 450 mAh 1S folded cell battery. Yeah, that's about it. It's going to start to brown the VTX out at this point. So that should be maybe 2.5 minutes. Nope, 2:10. Yeah, this rig with these motors, when you start to push it really hard, it just eats the battery. I'm pretty sure what's going on is that the motors are getting really hot. When the motors get hot, the magnets get hot, and the magnets make less power when they get hot. And then you end up pushing harder on the throttle to overcome that, and it's just this like cycle that begins of motors not making enough power, getting too hot, pushing them to get even hotter, and so on and so forth. So yeah, Cinewhoop, not really a freestyle rig unless you're going to keep it inside the house. I don't really like it inside the house as a freestyle rig. If I'd kept flying it hard, we would have gotten like 1 minute and 30 seconds, and that's just absurd. Like, don't do that to yourself. This setup, as pretty as it is, and as much as I want this to work, it's gonna come apart. It's not the one. It's not the one. Meteor 75 Pro, but more importantly, there's a visitor. Oh, get your little fuzzy ass up here. Look at him. Look at this visitor. Look at that face. Oh, you stink, bro. Stop biting. The puppy of all puppies. The miniature schnauzer of all miniature schnauzers. Look at that wiener. That's a strong... Never mind. Never mind. Don't finish that sentence, you lunatic. Same exact build, but in a Meteor 75 Pro frame with the 45mm GemFan tri-blades, Flywoo 1002 23,500 kV motors. I tried this on the 45mm bi-blades, and it was brutal. There was nowhere near... Look at that unit. There was nowhere near enough RPM for these bi-blades. So I put it on these tri-blades, and it got a lot better. Still not happy with this, though. We'll talk about that more in a second. Let's put it up in the air. And we'll get our second sort of baseline here. And now I need to, like, kind of remember this. I need to remember what this flies and feels like, because when I change these motors, I need to be able to say, like, yes or no, this is making more or less power. So I might talk a little bit less here. Doesn't mean I don't love you. It just means that I'm trying to remember what this thing flies like.
Low battery.
So let's give it a shot. Cold Power says Teddy wants to eat the... Oh, shit. Mockingbird says, why does stock Mobula 6 2024 not show what kilohertz it's set up on the ESC config? That's weird. I don't think I noticed that. Maybe I did, though. It's been a while since I tested it. Look at this dog. What's he doing? Oh, shit. He's being Mr. Big Stuff. Oh! Teddy, careful. What was that? Teddy. Stop it! Teddy Spaghetti! Relax. Teddy! It's gonna rip your beard hairs out, buddy. Teddy! Oh! Shit! See that little move he did to the side? He knew which way it was going. Oh, shit! Hold on. This is how we spend half a battery every time this dog's down here. Just learn to love it. Learn to love it, my friends. It's gonna be worth it, I promise. Because when I do finally take this thing off, wait till you hear the noise that he makes. Ready? Here it goes. Oh, he didn't do it! Oh, there he goes. Alright, so here, oh boy, we got some fail-safes going on. What is happening with this? The beginning of the battery, the first time I fly this rig, it gets these weird little micro fail-safes, but then it's fine. It's so strange. Oh my god. So this thing is really heavy. So inside the house, it sucks. Outside, it's better. It's significantly better outside. But yeah, I mean, these Flywheel motors, they've never really, like, blown me away. Whew. Alright, let me just fly for a second or two. Up here is a better analog for kind of flying outside. Man, look at the battery voltage all the way down at 3.5 already. Ah, I thought I could keep it off that railing. Oh, there was another little micro failsafe. You see that, like, jarring little rotation that happened there? That was it holding the last... Nah, it was it going into micro failsafe. That's what it was. You know what failsafes are. So that big throw, this big throw is always where I kind of like judge. Oh god, where I judge the power of a rig. So yeah, a little bit more power, but still not enough. Oh! And boy, oh boy, is this thing fat. It is just the chubbiest chub monster of all. Yes? How can I help you, small dog? Oh, he backed off on that one. Hey! Careful! Careful with that beautiful beard, buddy. Careful! Oh, I don't think I'm getting out of this one. Oh, and it's starting to brown out. We are at the end of this battery. Come on, Teddy, let me bring it home. Come on, Teddy, please! Oh, thank you, buddy. Wait, no, we're good. We got a little bit more. Now we're not. So 2 minutes and 51. Very weird that this... not very weird. This gets more runtime. Watch this. Look at the difference in weight. What's the one thing that most negatively contributes to runtime, my friends? What is the one thing that a rig has to do the entirety of the battery? It's carry its own weight around, right? So as soon as you increase the weight, you almost always demolish the runtime in comparison. The rig we were just flying is 35.2 grams. The one we were flying a minute ago is 30.8. Is that really it? I thought it was a bigger difference than that. 30.8. Oh, 35. Right. So 5 grams, 30, 50%, 25%, 12 and a half or so percent heavier, and yet 2 minutes and 10 seconds, 2 minutes and 50 seconds. That right there, the much heavier rig getting significantly more runtime, in my opinion, is a surefire example of these motors are getting too hot. These magnets are getting too hot. And then we're just dumping amps into these motors. You could even argue that I went too high of a kV on this. I should have maybe stopped at 30,000 kV. But when I tested two identical rigs with 802 30,000s versus 33,000s, the 33,000s did fly better, hands down, and it didn't have nearly enough power on the 30,000s, so I had to keep going. But basically what's going on here is that with Walksnail and with the weight of the 75, 802 is not a big enough motor. It's not a big enough heat sink to stay cool enough, and I'm pretty sure that's what's going on here. But that's not what we're testing tonight. Tonight we're testing Flywoo 1002 32,500 kV motors, which you just saw, against iFlight Xing 1002 22,000 kV motors. Because apparently the RCinpower 22,000 kV 1002s make a bunch of power, and more power specifically than these Flywoos. There is a chance that these Flywoo 1002s are just like a cursed motor, to use the nomenclature of gamers. And they ran like a weak magnet, or there's a massive air gap. But there's potentially just something going on about these Flywoo motors that they don't make a lot of power. They don't make the power that they should for the size and the kV that they are. 23,500 kV is awesome. That's great. And the reason I've been so down with these motors is that that's the highest kV that we've really found. And for the most part, with TinyWhoop motors, they're all too low of a kV, other than the 702s that we now have. But yeah, the problem that I've always had with TinyWhoop motors is that they're too low of a kV. And so as soon as a slightly higher kV 1002 came out, I jumped all over it. Because 9 times out of 10, higher kV motors make more power. We might be in a situation here, though, where that's not true. And that's what we're going to find out in a second. Let me try to get caught up on chat here. Deadzilla the Terrible says, were we supposed to remind you to do the frame code giveaway? Yes. We got to get this done first, though. So that we might have yet another live stream where we don't do it. I apologize. We will try, though. We're going to try. Shit, I'm going to have to change motor direction in here, I'll bet. Let's do this. Let's weigh these. Never mind. We're not going to weigh the motors because the wire lengths are drastically different between these two motors. And the wire is very heavy. So and also on the iFlight Xing motors, they're using a much thicker insulator on their wires. So let's do this. To compare these two motors, we're just going to give them the notchiness test. The flywheel actually feels like it's more notchy. Wow, there's a hell of a difference between these two motors. Look at this. Look at the difference in the thickness of where the magnets are. The magnets themselves might be they should be the exact same thickness, but they might not be. This flywheel motor, the area where the magnets goes is really skinny. This might be like a 10-01.5, or this might be a 10-02.5. See what I mean? I'm actually kind of excited now. More excited than I was, that's for sure. I thought this was going to be a waste of time and money. But boy, oh boy, is that... let's weigh them. Let's weigh them. We are going to weigh them, because it does matter. It does matter what they weigh. Flywoo 1002 23,500 kV motor, 2.57 grams. iFlight Xing, 2.61. 2.61 versus 2.54. So that's not nothing. But if the iFlight motor makes any more power, it'll offset that that difference in weight. If it makes 2 extra grams of thrust, right, it'll very easily offset, especially because there's 4 of them. It'll offset that difference in weight. I don't love adding to the all-up weight, but the problem that we're trying to solve with these Walksnail 75mm rigs is a lack of power. We're not really diving into runtime yet. We're not diving into flight dynamics. We are just trying to fix the problem power, the power problem. And a rig that doesn't have enough power is never going to make you smile. It's always going to be this experience of like you wanting more, and the PID loop not being able to perform as good as it should because it's down on power for the amount of weight. And so, yeah, like lack of power is the first thing. If that's a problem, that is the first thing that you should look to handle with a rig. Don't worry about runtime. Don't worry about durability. Don't worry about anything else. Figure out how to get enough power into the rig, and then take it from there. Because, yeah, not enough power. It just, the whole flight experience sucks. The PID loop is not going to be able to do its job properly. You're not going to be happy. You're going to have to like limp it around. You're going to be crashing because of it. You're not going to be able to do all the fun stuff. So that is our priority here. We are just focusing on thrust, and then once we figure out a way to get enough of it, then we can dive into the other stuff and figure out runtime and figure out durability and all that other very important stuff. But yeah, this is the most important. And in TinyWhoops, this is the problem that we run into the most, right? The situation where we don't have enough power to do all the crazy shit that we want to do. So that's the first place we're gonna kind of attack, and it's where most of our focus has kind of been on this. Pretty much all of our focus has been on these 75mm freestyle Walksnail rigs. Cole Power says Teddy wants to eat the Walksnail. Project Mockingbird says, oh no, we got that. I think that the Mobula 6 2024 actually ships on 96K. Do not quote me on that, though. I could totally be wrong. But I have some weird memory of changing it from 96K to 48 really early on. I have a live stream where I opened it up and started messing with it, and it's in there, and there are timestamps thanks to Apache Smoke, Wounded Sniper, and Quadbod, so it would be easy to find that. But yeah, I don't remember offhand. Timmons says, can you knife edge through the railing slats upstairs? I can, but the slats are so close together that it's one of these like zero skill, 100% luck moves. And I try not to do those all that often. I try to stick with moves that like I have some chance of hitting consistently. Yeah, I've done it a couple of times by accident. I've done it a couple times on purpose. But what I found is that it's just not. Yeah, I can't do it repeatedly. And yeah, try not to do those. It's just like if I'm going that direction, it's like throw it sideways so it's a little bit lower of a profile. And if it goes through, it goes through. All right, let's get these plugged in. Let's get the motor direction figured out in Betaflight. And I'm going to put it on tri-blades first, just because I want the only difference from a minute ago to be the motors. I would really love to run this thing on the bi-blades, though. Maybe these motors will work on the bi-blades. Why is it so hard to plug this motor in? What's happening here? Oh, there it goes. That was a little odd. Hopefully they're not all like that. Let's see here. Come on, get in there. There we go. Jesus, these motor... that one was a little bit better. There we go. What else we got? Magical kilohertz, yeah, right. Cole Power says, technically, MAH per gram energy density, MAH alone is the bigger part. But if you don't have the thrust to carry your weight, runtime is meaningless because you won't get off the ground. Yeah, it's there's some nuance to thrust to weight ratio in that if you reduce the weight, the thrust to weight ratio gets better. But 9 times out of 10, in the process of like the extra weight for a bigger motor, like a bigger motor will only be like a couple of extra grams. And so if you get more than like 1 or 2 extra grams of thrust, your net power to weight ratio gets better. And usually that's what happens. Usually you'll get 5, 10, 20 extra grams of thrust from a bigger, heavier motor. Not always, but typically. So yeah, more often than not, the bigger motors are going to give you better thrust to weight ratio. But there is a point where the rig becomes so heavy that the flight characteristics suffer. And so that's why trying to run the lowest weight motor possible makes a lot of sense. AntBVTHC says, what's your opinion on the Caddx Ant versus the other cams for analog? My main opinion is that all analog cams look like ass. The RunCam Nano 3 is significantly lighter weight than all of the other ones, and it looks good enough that it looks like the best ass ever. CiottiFPV 2024, at your service. All right, here we go. Let's get these motors spinning in the right direction, throw some props on, and away we shall go. Battery is plugged in. Motors tab. Motor direction wizard. I understand the risks. The props are definitely off. Start and spin. Please don't go full throttle. Oh, there's no props on. Out. Good. In. Bad. Reverse it. In. Bad. Reverse it. Out. Good. Let's make sure that they reversed. Yep. And yep. I do have this set up props out, right? Yeah, good to go. All right, let's double check it. Out. 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 Cool. Oh, these motors are not super well balanced. Huh. Let's try them individually. See if there's just one motor that's out. That one feels pretty smooth. That one's a little vibey. Huh. That one's nice and smooth. That one's a little vibey too. Huh, interesting. Not the best balanced motors right out of the box, but like I said, I've heard that it's extremely difficult to balance these itty bitty motors. So yeah, as long as we don't get jello, then they're balanced enough. Propellers going on. These are the GemFan 45 millimeter. Hold on, actually, I'm going to unplug this battery because these motor shafts seem like they might be a little bit bigger. I'm having to push pretty hard to get this motor on here, which might be an opportunity to shill. No, I was just not. Well, no, okay, yeah, so it is a little bit difficult to put these props on, so I'm going to use this little pin vise. I have 6 more of these for sale. Double-sided pin vise. One side has a 1.5 millimeter drill bit. The other side has a 0.99 millimeter drill bit. PayPal me $40 and I will send you the pin vise with both drill bits. And then what you can do is, instead of ruining your motors, you can just take your propellers real quickly, put them onto the pin vise, run it down, up and down the appropriate drill bit. That'll remove a tiny little bit of material from the props. And then when you put them onto the motor shafts, they won't be impossible to put on or off. And you will stop ruining your motors. That will literally prevent you from ruining motors. Because when you push these things on really hard, you push the motor shaft down through the motor bell. And that's that. And these motors are not free. So get yourself a pin vise and support your boy, CiottiFPV, at the same time. And yeah, your fingertips will thank you, your motors will thank you, your significant other will thank you. Because of your fingers, you know? You gross fuckers. Oh wait, it was me being gross this time? Okay, got it. Alright, 45 millimeter tri-blades are on. Let's see how it is. This is not an absolutely fresh battery. We were doing the motor spin-ups, but it's pretty fresh. Fresh enough. Frank Nicholas says, t-shirt giveaway also. I would like to do one, yes. Douglas Otwell says, new lava lamp sucks, no action. What? It's the same lava lamp, it's just a different top and bottom. Here we go, let's see how they are. Same or maybe less power. Oh, Christ. Let's come over here. Yeah, same. Possibly less. I had a funny feeling that those RCinpower motors were just magic. Let's fly a little bit more. Let's see what the runtime is like. Oh, no! Man, you can hear it. It sounds like shit on these motors. It's very, like, almost grindy on these motors. Let me come over here by the mic. Well, we tried. Give them a minute to kind of spin in, too. Throw another absolutely fresh battery on at the end of this one. Let's see what's going on up here. Alright, we're starting to get down in voltage. Starting to brown out a little bit. Oh, I think it was about to fall into that gate, but didn't quite get there. Oh, boy. It's hard to fly these big heavy rigs in the house. Yeah, it feels every bit as lazy and fat and ugh. But the motors are not overheating. The sim rig just ate me. Oh, come on. Give the quad back, sim rig, please. No. No, you're not gonna. You're gonna make me walk over there? Yeah, you are. Well, that's only a minute and 48. Jesus. This battery was not fully charged though. We're gonna run one more, see what the runtime ends up at. Damn. Okay. Well, I don't know. I don't know what I was expecting. I really want these effing RCinpower motors to get here. I was using the clone prop popper available over on TinyWhoop.com. Man, that was a weird crash. I just flew right into the fucking crash symbol. Oh boy, this is heavy, man. This is a fatty quad. And that is the end of that battery. 209. Let's hold on. We're gonna put a fresh one on here though and see what's what. All right, so.
Telemetry lost.
But yeah, I can already tell you, don't get these motors. I mean, whatever. They're probably about the same as the Flywoos. So if you were gonna buy the Flywoos, I don't know, maybe get these. But the Flywoos are a little bit lighter. I would rather have a slightly lighter motor if it's gonna make basically the same power. All right, right back in. Fully charged battery. Let's see if this is any better. Come on now. There it is. All right, let's see. Nah. You guys can see it, right? I mean, it's pretty much exactly the same. You know what I mean? Like that throw is... Oh man, it is so hard to fly these. Oh my god, that was a big hit. Oh my god! Yeah. I mean, you could still do stuff. Right? Like, it's not unflyable. It's just... it flies like a wet noodle. Like it's so heavy, it's so fat that like there's no precision to it. Oh, well. That's awkward. Super awkward. Oh man, come on now. Get out of there. Don't make me walk! I did not get into this to walk. Somebody said, yo, you want a hobby where you can just sit the whole time? I was like, damn right I do. I don't care what it takes. Yeah, no. These motors are not the way. Buy these or the Flywoos, you're going to get pretty much the exact same flight experience. I'm tempted to go back to the Flywoos now, but, like, it's just not... I mean... It doesn't matter. Either way, the motors don't have enough jam. Oh, shit! Crash recovery saved my ass on that one. Jesus, I can't do shit with this. Oh man, I think the runtime sucks on these. Hold on, let's see. Hey! Oh my god. Oh yeah, this runtime sucks. Alright, don't buy these, man. Buy the Flywoos. At least you'll get some decent runtime. Alright. Oh boy, a minute and 53. Yeah, don't buy these. Yikes. And that battery's not bouncing back. It's just sitting there at 3.7. All right, well, in the ongoing series of what not to buy, we have the newest entry, which is the iFlight Xing 1002s. Yeah, I mean, that's not even close to 2 minutes and 50. We pushed that battery a little bit to get the other one to 250, but, I mean, this is a full minute off. Like, that's yeah, no. So... maybe the efficient 1002s are the Flywoo 23500s. These iFlight Xings are similar performance-wise, but not runtime-wise. I don't know. It's a bigger can. It'll be a bigger heat sink. So if you were to like throw 2S at these and motor limit them down a bunch, that might be kind of cool. They might be a better motor to do that with because they're bigger, chunkier, bigger heat sink kind of thing. But I don't know. I don't know about that. I guess I can run. I mean, I have to take these props off anyway. So I guess I might as well put the bi-blades on these. But like, that ain't gonna do anything good. These are, yeah, no, I mean, whatever Flywoo has, look, RCinpower, it seems like they did something magical. They underspec the KV, they underspec the stator size, something like that, on their 1002s. I'll let you know as soon as they get here. It's not super surprising that these offer pretty much the same performance as the Flywoos. What I've heard from the people that I've heard from is like, yeah, the RCinpower 1002 22,000s are just a different thing. They're underspec'd or something like that. And so yeah, that tracks with the experience that we just had here. I was really hoping that the bigger bell with potentially bigger magnets would make a difference, but definitely not. Definitely not. You guys can see that it flies like a school bus, right? Like it's not good. Let's try the bi-blades though. I'm not going to push them all the way on because I know they're going to come right back off. And I'm going to try to not crash it. Anybody want to buy a set of Xing 1002 22,000s? If you do, let me know. They're for sale. Okay, here we go. Fresh ass battery going on. I'm probably only going to do a couple of throttle blips and then that'll be that. Oh, I turned the goggles off. What a donkey. All right, just for argument's sake, let's see.
Low battery.
You never know. Sure you do. You know what's about to happen. I know what's about to happen. Let's do it anyway. Come on, Avatar HD system. Come to life. Give us video out. Here it comes. All right, GemFan bi-blades. 45mm bi-blades. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Oh, whoa. That could be because I don't have the propellers pushed all the way down. Yikes. Or it could be what, was it 661 was saying earlier? Hold on. Jesus, this thing is a mess right now. What the hell? Let me push these props all the way down. Hold on. Not the end of the world to have to dig them off with the prop popper. All right, there we go. Let's try that. You never know. Man, that was nasty, though. Jesus. All right, let's see. It's probably going to be exactly the same. Yep. Jesus. Yeah, these props are not balanced. That is almost certainly a symptom of an out-of-balance propeller. Let's pull the master multiplier down just to try to get this under control. I'm going to pull it down a bunch just because I don't want to have to go back in there. Let's see. No, man, this is nasty. It's actually not that much work. Oh, boy. Well, if these 40mm props are not balanced, I need to get the hell off of this frame, which I am okay with. I would love for this frame to not... This Meteor 75 Pro frame is so heavy I would love to not have to run it. I would love to not run it, I should say. But with these big motors, I was assuming that the bigger props would help quite a bit. I mean, it moves around, but no, we need significantly more power than this for a proper freestyle rig. Let me show you what I'm going for. Jesus. Let me show you the performance that I'm looking for from one of these rigs. Just so that we're kind of on the same page. That's brutal. Yikes. Wow. All I've ever heard about 45mm props is that they're God's gift to propellers, and that I'm an idiot for not running Meteor 75 Pro frames on every single rig. How is it that I've not heard a single person until tonight talk about these propellers being out of balance, and then I've backed it up by seeing them being completely out of balance? Am I missing something here? What's the deal? This is an analog rig on 0802 27,000 kV motors. And this is a rig that performs well. Actually, this is on 30,000 kV motors now, but it performed just like this on the 27,000s. There was really not a significant difference in power between these two. Is this the right ELRS module? No? Okay. Knew that was coming. So this is the kind of performance I'm looking for from this rig in terms of something for jungle gym bashing, outdoor flying. Yeah, here you go. This is what I'm looking for. And I won't stop until I get it. I'll keep going bigger and bigger and bigger on the motors. You'll really be able to see it upstairs. So first and foremost, for fuck's sake. First and foremost, for the record, this rig is way too big to fly in the house. The hell am I? This is what I want. This is it. See the way that it changes direction? Oh, shit. Am I upside down? No, I'm right side up. The way that it throws itself around. The way that it floats. And I mean, just having enough power to do stuff like that, right? Having enough power to comfortably throw itself around without feeling so sluggy and fat and slow to respond. That's what I want. And I'm pretty sure I can get there, but I just have to find the right motor. The extra 6 grams from Walksnail is a lot. Ah, no, I didn't need to disarm there. Woo! Shit. Oh god, oh, I can't believe I got away with that. Oh. I think there's, oh yeah, there's mega up tilt on this rig because there's no ducts in view whatsoever. Hold on. Let me turn the up. Oh god, yeah. Oh god, there's like 40 degrees of up tilt. What the hell? How did that happen? Okay. It's going to be much more realistic to fly. Okay. I still suck, though. Okay, what was that? What the hell was that? What did I even hit? So that throw from the corner. Watch it now, ready? And listen to how quick, ready? Just a blip of throttle instead of sitting and just hammering on the throttle, right? Like just, yoop, and it throws it the whole way. That's what I want. That's the power to weight ratio that I'm looking for. And I was able to get it on the 65mm Walksnail build before I took it apart with the 0702 40,000 kV motors. But the problem was the runtime. The problem still is with 65mm Walksnail rigs. Is the runtime on the little 300 mAh batteries is just brutal. Speaking of runtime, I'm still flying this. Woo! Oh, stop it. Oh, stop it. What? What did I hit? You bastard, you. We'll call it there. But look at that runtime. 250 and it's at 367. And I was hammering this thing, right? Where'd you go, little guy? So yeah, that's the impossible journey that I've been on to try to get a Walksnail 75 to fly as good as an analog 75. And we'll just keep going, man. We'll just keep trying different shit. It sounds like either the RCinpower 1002s or the BetaFPV 1102s might get me there. We'll try the RCinpowers first. This rig's got some jello too. I wonder what's beat up. It's probably just a propeller that's beat. But I do need to look at that. There is an RPM that this thing starts to jello the fuck out. Let me get caught up on chat, and then we will shut it on down here. Get out of there. There we go. Walter says that prop plopper I want. Can I buy yours? You cannot, because I love it so much. This is the one that I like. If you can get one of these prop poppers, get it. The other one is simpler, but this is the one that I really like. This is the clone popper from TinyWhoop. Morton Upshot says, I've found that my happymodel 20,000 kV 1002s have performed better than RCinpower 22,000 1002s, but the happymodel motors are soldered. Okay, awesome, because I'm not doing that. Screw you, soldering these tiny motors up. Come here, Teddy. Stephen Woodruff says, any recommendations for a small Cinewhoop for indoor and outdoor flying? Small Cinewhoop for indoor. Man, that's tough. What are you going to be Cinewhooping inside? Like your own house? Or are you looking to do... There's so many questions that I have to ask to make a proper recommendation. I'll take some guesses. If you're just flying it for fun and you just want the ability to fly it inside... like a 2-inch something, like a 2-inch Gep RC Cinelog or 20 or something like that. Man, it sucks to fly inside unless it's a big space, but technically you could fly it inside. And then it kind of works outside, but it's also not going to be great outside. Something that flies both inside and outside is a mega compromise. Like if you want something that'll fly both inside and outside, it's going to suck inside and it's going to suck outside. So that's just, and I hate that. Like I hate to have to do that to you. So yeah, super, super, super difficult question. And I mean, there's so many questions, right? Are you picking up a full-size GoPro? Naked GoPro 03, like there's just so much nuance to making a proper suggestion on that. Kevin the Alien with a $10 super chat, he says, Gear Fund. Thank you, brother. 171 goes to 181. Kevin Sumner is doing a bunch of work on the all cameras front, and then when he's done with all of it, I'm gonna send him however much of this fund he will take, and then he's gonna send me the cameras and we can test them here as well. That's what's going on with that. Jay Hines says, what do you think of using RunCam Split3-Lite as a cheaper way of seeing it in HD? What's it? Can't do Walksnail because my goggles are Fat Shark Scout. All of the split setups other than the RunCam hybrid kind of suck. The field of view is very narrow. The latency is pretty brutal. So you end up with something that as an FPV cam is pretty shitty, and then the HD is not all that good either. The O3 system is the first time that like the FPV is acceptable, and then the HD is amazing for what it is. So yeah, I can't recommend any of those RunCam splits. I've tried a lot of them, and they're just a super letdown. Man, this chair, this happens to all of these. This is coming apart, and it's starting to get bad enough where it's like catching on my elbow, and it makes me so sad because I love this chair and I've had it forever, and office chairs are expensive. Oh, man, I'm probably gonna try to just put a big old piece of Gorilla Tape there, but then the Gorilla Tape adhesive is gonna catch on my arm hairs and drive me mad. Stephen Woodruff said, oh no, we got that. Morton Upshot, we got that. Cole Powers says, easy fix, motor limit to 110%. Oh, if it were only that easy. 661FPV says, those sound just like my GemFan 45mm biblades. Horrible. Oh, what the hell, man? I'm totally fine with it. I'm totally fine with the 45mm props being out of balance. That shows how insane all these people are that have been saying 45mm is everything. It's the greatest. And it also prevents me from having to run a big, heavy, silly frame. I would so much rather force myself to run these 75mm frames and just try the different motors on them. So yeah, we'll see. Although I will say that the tri-blades were fine on 45, so I'm gonna keep using this with the tri-blades, and then at some point we will test these. I've already run these 1002s on the smaller props on the smaller frames, and I did notice when I went to the bigger props and the bigger frame, they made more power. Go figure. But yeah, Kevin Sumner says, do you see the horizontal banding in low light in the Walksnail goggles? Absolutely. Or is that an artifact coming over the stream? Nope, you absolutely see it in the goggles. It's just when you go to super low light, which upstairs definitely is, it's doing everything it possibly can to give you a flyable image. And so it's cranking the ISO up. The ISO is probably like 1,600 upstairs, maybe even 3,200. And the noise is going to come when that happens. So yeah, that's just sort of is what it is. All of these tiny little cameras with the tiny little sensors are going to struggle in low light. It's like crazy what the analog FPV cams manage to do in low light. But any kind of like an HD camera where you're squeezing a ton of little pixels into a tiny little sensor are going to struggle in low light. 661 says, thanks for letting me hear your 45mm props because they sound exactly like mine do, just loud as hell. Kevin Sumner says, are you only reading reviews of those 45mm props on Facebook? Yeah, right. Siskel FPV says the RCinpower 22,000 1002s are great on the analog. I don't think you're going to be stopping there. I'm waiting on 1003 22,000s for the Walksnail. Yeah, I'm looking forward to my 1003s getting here as well. I ordered a set of those from Pyro Drone, I believe. I might not have put that order in. I did not put that order in, did I? Ah, you jerk. You didn't put the order in. Shopping cart's still here, though. Maybe? Is the shopping cart still here? Yes, it is. Cool. Oh, that's right. That's why I didn't put the order in, because they only have one of the 1003s in stock. RDQ has 3 in stock. So I have to do 2 more orders. Stephen Woodruff says, got behind on the stream, but planning on carrying a Thumb Pro, mainly outdoor flying for a Cinewhoop. So the Thumb Pro is only like 8 grams or something. Problem is, like, nothing is set up to carry it that I know of. So your selection, a big part of your selection is going to have to be based around what frames someone on Thingiverse makes a holder for. So that's going to be your first stop, is to try to figure out what builds, either have a RunCam Thumb Pro mount, or somebody on Thingiverse makes a RunCam Thumb Pro mount. That'll narrow it down to like 2 different builds, and then hopefully it'll be pretty obvious which one to get. Northern Tier says, I don't think there are a lot of people into 45mm. Maybe I'm wrong. Building my first one for Walksnail using the BetaFPV 1102s. When 45mm first came out, loads of people were like, this is the greatest thing ever. And then I haven't really heard much since then. Walter says, do that again, please. Do what? That was at 10:43. How 10:34? 1 minute ago. Answer a question? That's all I remember doing a minute ago, was answering a question. Damn. Well, we tried them. For science, if anybody wants these, they're all yours. I don't know what I paid, but I'll charge you a little bit less than I paid. Yeah, I don't know. Damn. Oh well. This is why we test. Thank you for the support, friends. The reason I can do testing like this is because you beautiful bastards support me over on CiottiFPV.com. Join my Patreon. Buy something from my Etsy store. Book a one-on-one session to really learn some stuff through Fiverr. What else? Buy a t-shirt from Teespring, or use my affiliate links. They're all up there. Use somebody's affiliate links, man. It's free money. Help us keep making free stuff for you to watch on YouTube. And, yeah, we will gladly keep on doing it. Yeah, some of us will. Some of us will quit. It's easy to quit. It's hard to keep going. That's what she said. Is it? Is it, though? These motors are coming right off. There's nothing about these motors that I'm like, I want to test them more. But, yeah. Seamus Kelly bought a radio through my affiliate link on Amazon. Thank you, brother. I have an affiliate link for Amazon, my friends. I know you're buying shit on Amazon. Change your bookmark to Amazon, or if you just type AMA in your URL bar, type AMA, remove the suggestion, and then hit my Amazon affiliate link a couple times. And then every time you hit you type AMA into your URL bar, it'll guess my affiliate link, and you won't have to ever think about it again. These are the ways that you get some free money coming to your favorite creators on YouTube or wherever else you hang out, and help them keep doing their thing and do their thing better, right? The more money that we've got, the more shit we can test and just smash and bash. Sean Lewis Media with the last comment of the live stream. He says, what motors for a Cinewhoop style TinyWhoop like the one that you were flying earlier? I want to build a Walksnail style like what you're running for indoor warehouse filming at the RC track. Sean, you are literally right now watching me figure that out. I do not have the answer for you yet. Tonight, I showed you and flew all of the different setups that all of the best setups that I've found so far. And then, yeah, hopefully more of these motors will continue to come in and I can do more testing. But what you saw tonight are the 3 best setups that I've found. So yeah, if one of these looks good enough for you, awesome. None of them are good enough for me yet, so I have to keep testing. But yeah, I don't have an answer for you because I don't even know the answer for myself quite yet. But like I said earlier, I have pretty absurdly high standards. So maybe the 802 setup is enough for you. Maybe the Flywoo 1002 setup is enough for you. You've got the flight footage. You've got my commentary over it. Yeah, hopefully there's one that is good enough for you. Otherwise, you're just going to have to keep waiting. But I'm going to keep testing these as they arrive. I don't know what GetFPV is up to, but hopefully they get me my damn RCinpower 1002s sooner than later. I'm sure they will. And we can continue to try to refine this formula. But yeah, I'm not happy with any of these quite yet. Cool. Thanks for hanging, friends. My name's Aaron Ciotti. Everybody calls me Ciotti. Go do something fun. Do whatever you want. Hey, here's the rest of the flying from the beginning of the live stream. Love you, bye! I'm not ready yet. Oh, wow, there's like 10 seconds left. I'm going to rewind it a little bit. This is a early days of the glide. This is back in 2019, actually. Blast from the past. March 27th of 2019, flying at my favorite spot in all of Charleston. It's the bridge to Daniels Island. A hot little move. I'm coming at you with a couple of hot moves on this one that you would have seen at the end of the, towards the end of the intro. Love you, bye! See you guys Friday.